Alright, so in this video we're going over the sum and distance formulas. Alright, now before we've been taking the sine and cosine of angles that are on the unit circle, like pi over 3, pi over 6, pi over 4, and so on. Now, what happens if I wanted you to take the sine of, say, 75 degrees? 75 degrees is not on the unit circle. Okay, so what you would have to do here is use the sum formula or difference formula for sine. Okay, I would use the sum, not the difference, because of 75 degrees. We know 30 plus 45 equals 75. And 30 and 45 are both on the unit circle. One of them's pi over 6, one of them's pi over 4. Alright? So now, what we would do is, for the sine sum and difference formula, it's the sine of theta plus or minus beta equals the sine of the first times the cosine of the second plus or minus whatever your value was here, the cosine of the first times the sine of the second. Okay? So for our case, the sine of 75 degrees, if we wanted to do this as the sine of 30 plus 45 degrees, okay, we would do it as the sine of the first, so the sine of 30 times the cosine of 45 plus, because we're adding them together, the cosine of 30 times the sine of 45. Okay? So now, the sine of 30, if you go to your unit circle, it's pi over 6, and the sine of pi over 6 is 1/2. So it's going to be 1/2, times the cosine of 45 degrees, which is square root of 2 over 2. Because remember, 45 degrees is pi over 4, plus the cosine of 30, which is square root of 3 over 2, plus the sine of 45 degrees, which again is square root of 2 over 2. Alright? So now you multiply this together, you get the square root of 2 over 4 plus the square root of 6 over 4. So write it as one single fraction. Your answer comes out to be the square root of 2 plus the square root of 6 over 4. Okay? Now, the cosine formula works very, very similar. But there is one major difference. Okay? Here, if you're adding your angles together, when you do the cosine, you have to flip your sign, so you're going to have to subtract them apart. Okay? So say I wanted to find the exact value of the cosine of 105 degrees. Okay, I want to find the cosine of 105 degrees. Again, not on my inner circle, so I got to use the sum and difference formulas. Alright, so for 105, let's use 60 and 45. Okay? So we're going to have the cosine of 60 plus 45. And that's going to be, now the cosine one's a little different. Okay, if you're adding them together, it's going to be the cosine of the first times the cosine of the second. Reverse your sign. If it's positive, it becomes negative. If it's negative, it becomes positive. And then the sine of the first, sine of the second. I wrote that wrong. Sine of the second. Okay? So for the cosine of 60 plus 45, we're going to have the cosine of 60 times the cosine of 45. Since we're adding them here, we're going to subtract the sine of 60 times the sine of 45. Hopefully that all stayed in the camera. Okay? So now let's do the cosine of 60. Cosine of 60, if you look it up on your chart, 60 is pi over 3. It's going to be 1/2. Cosine of 45, it was in the last problem, square root of 2 over 2, minus the sine of 60, which is square root of 3 over 2, times the sine of 45, which is the square root of 2 over 2. Alright? So as you can see, this one's going to give us the same answer, except we're going to subtract the 2 instead of adding them. So this would give us the square root of 2 over 4 minus the square root of 6 over 4, or just the square root of 2 minus the square root of 6 over 4. Alright? So, I could keep giving you problems, but that'd be kind of redundant. Okay? So the main thing is to write down these two formulas here. The sine of theta plus or minus beta equals sine of the first times the cosine of the second plus or minus cosine of the first, sine of the second. And your cosine formula is the cosine of theta plus or minus beta is the cosine of the first, cosine of the second, minus plus, because remember you got to flip the signs, okay? And then the sine of the first times the sine of the second. Alright, now, and the important thing is when you go to find theta and beta, or x and y, you can call these whatever you want, I just chose theta and beta. The important thing to remember is you need angles on your unit circle. Okay, it doesn't matter which one you use, but you need angles on your unit circle. If they're not on your unit circle, you can't give me an exact value like this. Okay, that's why since I wanted the cosine of 105 degrees, we had to split it up into 60 plus 45 and then solve for the cosine of those two and the sine of those two and simplify it down to get the exact value of the cosine of 105 degrees. Alright, we'll work on more problems on these tomorrow in class, but for now the important thing to remember is make sure you have these written down. And again, the sign here is opposite the sign here. If you're adding them, you're going to subtract them here. If you're subtracting them here, you're going to add them here. Alright? So, this has been your sum and distance formulas. Make sure you have these formulas written down. Make sure you understand how to do this for tomorrow.